Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Family Scuba. Today I'm going to talk about, briefly anyway, about Piquette Mine. If you want to know more about it, its location, how to dive here, and some of the more interesting parts about it, uh, check out a video I made a little over a year ago about this location, and I include a little bit of its history. This video, I'm not going to focus on that because I already made a video about that. So if you want to learn more, please check that video out. This one's going to be more about the KISS Sidewinder and my personal opinion, pros and cons after 25 hours on the unit. This is not, a very uh, all encompassing review. This is just simply my experience with it, and it's in response to some questions that I've gotten over the past several months about it. I was asked to make this video, this commentary, so I started jotting some notes down over the last few dives, and put some pros and cons together that I was gonna share with you guys today. If I missed something that you had a question about, or something specific that you wanted me to go over, would like me to go over, please ask in the comment section, and I will definitely try to answer those questions. So we'll get to the pros and cons. I'll start with the pros, so there's no bias towards leaving you with a positive note. I'll end with cons because I don't think they're that bad anyway. But there are some, like with anything. There's always going to be drawbacks to anything that we buy. So I hope this video gives you a better understanding of the unit, what you can expect, and how much modification you'll have to do, if any, really, because it's all personal preference anyway. But why don't we just get right to it? So as far as pros go, I listed on the very top of that pros list that it's a side mount unit. And I understand or realize that being a side mount unit can also be a big major con for some people. And the reason is side mount is um, not easy to set up initially for some people. I have heard some comments over the years from people that side mount was just too finicky to set up. So if you're new to side mount and you're learning how to side mount dive on top of learning how to use this rebreather, especially if you've never used a rebreather before, you're going to be tackling two things that on their own are pretty difficult themselves or by themselves. So to try to do both at the same time, I think some people are going to find it extremely difficult, more so frustrating than anything, and that can be that could just turn you off or turn you away from the unit, especially if you're used to back mounted doubles, or even single tank, because more often Nowadays, people are going from recreational diving to rebreathers and doing recreational dives with them. So if that's all you've ever dove, if that's the only configuration you've ever had any experience with, going to a side-mounted rebreather might pose a little bit of difficulty. But I have also heard that people um, who have a lot of tech diving experience, or not even so much tech diving experience, but are already comfortable in the water, the unit does put you in pretty good trim right from the get-go. You still have to work on your weighting, obviously, and get your weight distributed correctly. But uh, it is easier in that respect. But like I said, if you're not set up for side mount, if you've never dove in that configuration before, it could potentially be pretty frustrating trying to figure out both things at once. And again, that's something that your instructor should help you out considerably with. But I mean, it's still up to you to to figure it out ultimately and get comfortable in the water. Um, it's like it's like anything else. You can get all the advice in the world and be told how to assemble something, but everyone's different. Everyone's physically built different. I'm really tall and pretty leg heavy, so it it takes quite a bit of weight up high for me to get trimmed out correctly, and that's just something that I have to work on because the instructor can watch me all day, but ultimately they can't feel what I feel. So uh, it does help again to have some experience in side mount, I think. But again, that's a pro and a con that I pretty much touched on all in one. But um, I guess why tackle two difficult things to master if you can just do one at a time, I guess. Um, is it the end of the world? No, not the end of the world. If you do plan, if you do plan on buying a Sidewinder, I would suggest at the bare minimum, go out and do a few dives in side mount so that you can feel what it's like to dive in that configuration. So you're not starting like brand new in your Sidewinder course. But again, not the end of the world. The unit does a pretty good job about putting you in trim. And if you're fairly neutral to begin with, as far as top to bottom, and you don't need a ton of weight up high like I do, it should be fairly easy to square away. Actually, looking at my list now, and I already touched on my second thing I had on there, which it puts you right into trim with little setup, and that is true. However, again, everyone's built different. You know, we're all going to sit differently in the water. You know, so that's going to be all a personal setup. Better evenly weighted you are, the better it's going to go. So the next thing I have, as far as a pro, um, I have listed that it's very minimalistic, very simple the way it's built. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about how it's built. Again, there's a video for that on my channel that I go piece by piece and show everything and talk about the quality and the workmanship that went into it, and touch on the components themselves. But I will say here, I'll kind of repeat briefly that it is bare bones. Well, bare bones is the wrong word to use. It is everything you need and nothing that you don't need. I guess is the easiest way to describe it. You've got your two canisters that are solid pieces. You've got your counter lung, your breathing loop with your diver supply valve. That is the mouthpiece. If you're not familiar with rebreathers, and a computer that's connected to three sensors. And there is absolutely zero break on this thing. You've got a shearwater computer. I opted for the hardwired cable because reading various forums, I've read that the connections will inevitably become damaged over time because they're exposed to the water, and partially because it was also cheaper, which is a pro in my eyes as far as deciding which one to get. Again, I talk about that in the other video, but hardwired computer to Shearwater. If you've ever owned a Shearwater product, you know they're pretty much bomb-proof. I have never had one fail on me ever in 5 years of diving. I bought my first Shearwater like 3 months after I got certified, and have never looked back. The only other component that has any real chance of failing you without, well, I was going to say without warning, but that's not true either, because they do give you a warning if properly checked and maintained and you do your checks correctly, is the O2 sensors. There's three O2 sensors. They mount into the left canister head, and that's it. Everything else is about as simple and rock solid as it comes. There's, again, nothing to break on it really. The sensors, yeah, they go bad, but sensors are redundant on there. There's three of them, and sensors are part of every rebreather, so it's not like it's specific to this unit. Again, if you maintain them correctly, you keep them dry, and you do your checks properly, there's no reason why they should cause any kind of catastrophic incident underwater. I just don't see that happening. No issues with that. Yeah, there are a lot of O-rings on this unit, as is with anything else, but O-rings are just a part of life with scuba diving. They're on everything. Everything. I maintain my own regulators, and I mean, each regulator's probably got about anywhere between 14 and 20 O-rings between the first stage and the second stage combined. So there are O-rings on pretty much every component of dive equipment. And O-rings are O-rings. Again, just like with anything else, if you check them, lube them, keep them clean, free of debris, clean all the mating surfaces, they will not become prematurely damaged. And if you look at them every time you go to assemble something, you will be able to more than likely find something that's going to cause you an issue before it becomes a problem. The diver supply valve, I opted for just the oxygen, the regular standard that comes with the unit. diver supply valve. All it does is supply oxygen to the rebreather. It does that through a mass flow orifice that's in the valve, and the valve itself, again, consists of a few O-rings and a shaft that moves when you press the button to allow gas or oxygen through into the right canister to mix in with the breathing gas in the loop. And again, like with any other rebreather on the market, you're going to need a diver supply valve, and this one is about as easy and simple as they come. I don't see that being an issue or ever failing on me as long as you keep up with just normal, regular, maintenance that comes along with any piece of dive equipment. What I do like, what I especially like about the simplicity of this unit is that it doesn't have uh, any extras. And when I say extras, I mean there's no internal batteries, there's no computers running solenoids, there's no solenoids themselves, there's none of that. Um, I've mentioned it in the past, and I keep mentioning that I've mentioned it in the past, but I don't know who's listening. And if you've seen any of my other videos, I'll keep reminding people. I come from the automotive industry. I have a background in um, the automotive field, and I can tell you that components with any moving parts are going to fail at one point or another. And that can be either through mechanical failure, they can begin to rust or get some sort of particle or debris in them, and they will seize, they will fail to open or close. Oftentimes, they will open and then fail to close, and then other times they will just fail to open. And I'm referring to solenoids themselves. Other times they fail electronically. The windings can go bad, the contacts can go bad, the there can be corrosion or bad connections. It's just more failure points. And I understand, and I don't argue the fact that there are lots and lots of failure points on rebreathers and scuba equipment in general, but I feel like, why introduce more failure points if they're not needed? And again, I'm biased towards this unit because it's the only one I know. I've never dove an electronic rebreather or fully electronic rebreather, but I don't I don't know if I would ever want to own one. To be honest, it just everything else aside, the simplicity of this specific unit, which is built like many or most or all, as a matter of fact, of the KISS line, is just to keep it simple. Keep it simple, reduce the moving parts, reduce the amount of failure points you could potentially have, and maintain it, and you won't have an issue. That's how I feel about my unit. So enough of that. I think I've beat that down enough. So I'll move on to my list again. And the very next thing I already talked about: no batteries to run solenoids. It's just batteries fail, solenoids fail. I've seen it time and time again. I wouldn't want them to fail on me when I'm, several thousand feet inside the cave. Um, the I guess the counter argument to that is, well, the constant flow orifice or the could also fail. Um, but again, I can look inside the orifice. I can maintain it. I can't see the windings on a solenoid. I can't see where the contacts are soldered to the wires on the inside of it. Those are things that you can't see, you can't maintain, and those kind of things, you know, those kind of things scare me, not knowing if they're going to fail, when they're going to fail. So why even have them? Is my opinion. So moving on from that, I had written down that it has great work of breathing, and I've mentioned that in other videos as well. That can be subjective. If you're potentially an out of shape person to begin with, or you lose your breath easily. I mean, that those all may be contributing factors to why some people feel like it has a hard work of breathing. I don't know. Um, I mean, it could also be the way it's set up. Um, that can be a pro and a con, I guess. It needs to be set up correctly, but I mean that can be said for any rebreather. However, I have found assembling my unit, dozens of times now, that if you don't route everything just right, or if you don't position the counter lung just right, you might end up squeezing it differently or in a weird way that doesn't allow gas to pass through as efficiently. It's always going to pass through, but it may not be as efficient. And again, that just may be totally dependent on how it's set up. Um, I'm the kind of person that is always, 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 always modifying my gear, changing it up a little bit, um, you know, trying to make it better, trying to reach perfection, I guess. And that sometimes, um, goes the wrong direction first before I correct it and fix it. And then it's, 100% how I want it. So setup may be a contributing factor to that. Again, I don't know. I only know my unit. I only know how I set it up for me. Um, and I continue to make changes even after my class, even after all of the instruction that I got from the instructor and tips. It's still, I think it's still up to the individual to tweak things until they're just right for them. I don't think you can make that happen in a 5, 6, day class. It's impossible. But as in general, for me, the work of breathing has been great. Head down, head up, sideways has never been an issue. Um, I won't get ahead of myself again here, but the sideways thing I will talk about in a little bit when I get to the cons, because that I have read it mentioned online multiple times about the ADV activating when you don't want it to. But I'll get to that in a second. Pro, another pro. It's clean and tight. Small profile. It gets sucked into your body really nice and good and tight, and you're able to squeeze through pretty small restrictions very easily. It doesn't add anything to your height, which is great. Um, so that's a huge pro for me. I like that it's side mount because of the two bottles. It's very easy to configure that for decompression dives. Having one side mount bottle as your diluent and another one as your um, uh, first deco stop bailout gas. Your diluent being your initial bailout gas to work your way up. And that configuration works great in open water. Not so much for penetration diving, but plenty of gas for open water, or even relatively deep decompression dives. So cons, I already touched on a lot of these. It's a side mount unit. If you're not used to side mount, um, setup and getting comfortable in it could potentially be difficult for you. That's just the nature of the beast. Also, it's heavy, um, which in of itself, the weight isn't the issue. It's that the unit has no rigidity to it. There's no frame, there's no stand like a lot of the back mount units. And with the amount of weight that I need to put on it to become negative, to be able to sink, it's very difficult to lift that thing up over my shoulders to get my arms in. It's right around 60 pounds, and because it's so uh, loose, or so there's it's so floppy that it's not easy to grasp onto and swing around. Plus, you have the tank hanging down at the bottom. It's not easy, is what I'm saying. It can be done, uh, but you know, it's something to think about. Something that you would have to work around. Um, Transporting it, something that I had not even considered through all my research online. This is kind of stuff you don't learn until you take a class. Is when you fill the canister with the sorb, if you transport it on its side, laying down, it can settle and then cause channeling. That would obviously be bad because then you have a free, open um, method for CO2 to get past the sorb without being scrubbed out, and that's never good. I found that like those big milk crates work for me. I can put it on the BC and then just stand it up in there, and it keeps everything upright, so I don't have that issue. But again, something that you need to consider if you're going to be traveling with it, or driving far distances, I should say. Or you can assemble it on site, but then it takes forever. And, usually when you get on site, you want to get in the water to maximize your day. But things to consider. The other thing that I have on here for a con is I can't reach the D rings on the small of my back with my other side mount rigs, BCs. I have a butt plate with D rings on it that I hang everything on. And with the canisters being where they are, you can't reach it. I mean, even the katana that was made for the unit has D rings on the back, and I can reach those, but because they swing back and forth, it is difficult, extremely difficult for me with dry gloves, glove liners, and all that to get anything hooked on there. So I don't even bother. I end up hooking everything on to the drop square drop rings on the bottom that the tanks hang on to, and that seems to work just fine. I have a hard time reaching the bottom dump. Same reason why I can't reach the D-rings on the butt plate. Those canisters really hinder your movement as far as getting your arm around your body. But not a huge deal. The top dump works really well, and then you don't have to really go head up very far to get it to dump. But um, still something to consider. I've thought about extending that the dump hose line so I could bring it up higher towards my possibly my waist strap or something, and pull it from there. But we'll see. Like I said, always something to tinker with. And then another con I have on here is that the sorb is always moist after extended dives. I think that's just the nature of this rebreather. However, I know, and I've mentioned before as well, that other rebreathers have like baffles or water traps that prevent moisture. Your saliva and the humidity coming out of your breath from getting onto it. But again, I think being a two canister design, the first canister does all the CO2 scrubbing. By the time it gets wet or what have you, it's the other canisters doing the job for the unit anyway. So I don't believe it decreases the amount of bottom time you get out of the amount of sorb you have. I know lots and lots of people are diving these units. They all end up with moist or damp sorb, and it has not caused an issue for anyone. So it's just the nature of this unit. Some people find that alarming, or they don't feel comfortable with it, but it is what it is, and just be aware that's just going to be the case. I've never had an issue, like I said, as well as other people. So my last con was that ADV activating when you don't want it to, um, part that I mentioned earlier. So the ADV is on the right canister, and just like when you go head up and you that static load shifts, when you tip your right shoulder down, and you have to go considerably down, like past 45 degrees or something like that, all of that, the air in the loop rushes to the other side, which would be the left a canister, and that creates a negative pressure, or negative. It creates a vacuum on the bottom, on the where the ADV is located. And if you take a breath, whether the loop needs gas added or not, if you take a breath while you're in that position, it's going to activate it. I have found, once I realized that as long as I don't take a breath at that exact moment when I lean over to go look at something to my left, by dropping my right shoulder and moving my body that way, or repositioning my body that way, it's a non-issue. I've never had to stay tipped to right arm down or shoulder down, right shoulder down, for more than a few seconds just to look in that direction. So I don't think that's a problem. And if you had to be in that position, and you weren't going to change depth, you just shut the tank off for a minute or two, however long you're going through there. So again, if you know your unit, I don't think it's an issue. I know a lot of people had a problem with that on several forums that I read. It really isn't. It's just a matter of getting to know your unit and training with it. Training and diving and figuring out how it works and how to dive it, essentially. As far as upgrades go, that'll be the last thing I'll talk about. I don't think I got mine bone bare stock, like no upgrades on it. And besides putting some elbows, I don't think I would change anything on it at this point. I like the ADV. I like that I can just inhale and it adds gas to the loop when it needed. The only thing that I would change is maybe down the road in the future I'll get a bailout valve, and only because there have been a lot of studies done on accidents that could have been prevented by the death of the diver could have potentially been prevented by the use of a bailout valve and a gag strap. So that's the only thing I'll be looking into in the future. It has nothing to do with the Sidewinder specifically. Again, a lot of these cons are not unit specific. They're just rebreathers, in general. And a bailout valve, I think, would be pretty beneficial in terms of survivability should you have an issue. However, having said that, and now having just over 25 hours on the unit, again, a lot of, in my opinion, these accidents that have happened have all come down to human error. And the bottom line is, if you're not going to be meticulous about maintenance and setup and doing your dive checks, you should probably stick to open circuit anyway. Not to be critical, but you know, it just there's they can accidents can be prevented, and doing what you need to do will keep you out of trouble. So I will leave it at that. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that I answered a lot of the questions that I've been getting. If I left something out, or if there was something more that you would like me to comment on, please let me know and I will try to answer your questions. Take care, everyone, and happy diving.